Alright, let's look at Standard 5 real quick, Unit 2. 5A says, explain how the weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation and Daniel Shays Rebellion led to a call for a stronger central government. Let's look at this bottom part down here. Led to a call for a stronger central government. What do we mean by stronger central in a government form? Stronger central. Let's look at these three different types of government and see which ones was the strongest central government. Alright, here we go. We have unitary system of government, confederal system of government, and federal system of government. From 1607, when Jamestown was founded, during the colonial period, until 1783, the colonies operated under a unitary system of government. Alright, actually 1781. Depending on what you want to use. Okay, 1781, 1607 to 1781. Unitary system of government. We're going to talk about that. What was it? King and Parliament is the unitary government, central part of it. And then we're going to find that the United States changes in 1781 when we adopted the Articles of Confederation, and that's going to last until 1789. We're going to have a confederal system of government. And then with the adoption of the United States Constitution, from 1789 to the present, we're going to operate under a federal system of government. So to differentiate between these three governments, we need to ask a question. The question in each one of these is, where is the locus of sovereignty, or location of the power to rule? Location of the power to rule, or which government has the most power to rule? Which level of government has the most power to rule? In other words, which one can create and which one can destroy? Which level? So let's look at unitary first. Under unitary system from 1607 to 1781, we see the United States colonies, or the American colonies, original 13, were under a unitary system. And in this type of system, power is centralized. That means it's in one place. It's in the national government right here. King George III and Parliament. Parliament's going to make these laws. King George III is going to enforce them, and they're both together. Or King George III is going to create charters for these colonies, and other kings like King Charles II are going to create these colonies. So they have the power of creating colonies. And then we saw in Massachusetts, they could even change colonies from a corporate charter to a royal charter. So the power to create or to destroy comes from here, the central government, national government. So that's the locus of sovereignty. And it flows down, and they had the power to create or destroy the colonies, the sub-governments, in this case colonies. Alright. So King George III and Parliament, the national government, under a unitary system, had the most power. Now we see that the Americans were not really satisfied with the unitary system. They become angry with some of the actions. King George III, when he did the proclamation of 1763 and said they couldn't colonize west of the Appalachian Mountains, they didn't like that too much. And all these other acts passed by Parliament are going to make the colonists angry. We saw that in earlier in the causes of the American Revolution. And then we saw that the king had been too abusive with his power. That's what the Americans said when they wrote the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson set out a list in Part 3, all these things the king was doing wrong. So if we were to summarize, what did the American colonists, how do they feel about this unitary system with most power centralized here with the king and Parliament? Did they like this? And the answer to that is no. They thought it was too strong, too tyrannical, too abusive. So then they changed their system to a confederal. After they declared independence, and then they operated on the Second Continental Congress, and then in 1781, Second Continental Congress creates the Confederated Congress. Under the Articles of Confederation, this document here is the first page of it. Here is a copy. Operating under decentralized government means that it's not centered in one place, but it's in 13 different places. And in this instance, in a confederal system of government, the locus of sovereignty is in 13 different locations. The states, the 13 states, hold most of the power. That's where the locus of sovereignty is. the power to rule is in each individual state. They're going to retain their individual power and be independent of one another. And the name of the United States was the United States under the Articles of Confederation. Names the United States, but it really meant these United States, meaning more than one, plural. And each one had its own power. Now the power is going to flow from this decentralized area, these sub-governments, 13 states, and they're going to agree to combine together in this loose league of friendship and create, under the Articles of Confederation, the Confederated Congress, and it's going to last from 1781 to 1789. And we see confederal in the name Confederated Congress, or Articles of Confederation. And this is the central government here is going to be left weak under the national government. Not much power here. We're going to talk about those weaknesses in a moment. So our power is decentralized here with sub-governments. So under a confederation, or Articles of Confederation, our confederal government, states are going to retain more governing power, and in the states, that's where their locus of sovereignty is going to be. So why did the states intentionally create a weak confederal government under the Articles of Confederation? We see three reasons. They feared a strong central government, like Great Britain. King George III in Parliament had over them authority too remote from the people. It was 3,000 miles away. And the Americans were weary of giving the new government that created the Articles of Confederation powers they had just denied to Parliament. So they're going to remove a lot of powers that the unitary system had, make sure that it doesn't have it in the Articles. Secondly, smaller states fear bigger states. They thought that Virginia, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania would dominate the government. So under the Articles, every state got one vote regardless of its population. That way it would promote equality. In reality, smaller states are going to have a more proportional amount of power. Third, they believed that a representative Republican government would only work in small communities that shared local common interest. In other words, how could Great Britain and King George III know what they need when they're 3,000 miles away? If we created a government here under the Articles and put it, say, in Philadelphia, how would a government in Philadelphia know what Georgia residents need? So local common small communities in the small representative republic is what we needed, and that's the three reasons why they intentionally created this week. So Shays Rebellion, what we're talking about here is these weaknesses in the Articles, and then Shays Rebellion is going to illuminate or reveal those weaknesses, and then that's going to cause leaders in the colonies to call for a stronger central government. In other words, the Constitution, which is going to create a federal government. So the colonists, some of the leaders, are going to come to view this new confederal government, because of all of its weaknesses, as too weak of a government. Alright, and then our 5A says, explain how the weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation and Daniel Shays Rebellion led to a call for a stronger central government. So we had one that was too strong with this unitary system. It was too strong, it was too tyrannical, too oppressive, too abusive. And then we changed to one that they said was too weak, the confederal government. So our question was, under the Articles of Confederation, how did Articles weaknesses and Shays Rebellion lead to a call for a stronger government? They want one that's stronger but not too strong, and so they're going to create this federal system of government with the United States Constitution that we're operating under now. But we're going to have a central or national government that gets the chance to govern over the people. Now it cannot destroy state governments. Okay, and then the state governments are also going to have the power to rule the sub-governments. 13 different states and future states are going to have the power to rule over the people, and they're going to be protected as well. So the state governments cannot destroy the national government, and the national government cannot destroy the state governments. So where's the locus of power to rule? Well, it's in both. Both are going to share power to rule over the people. It's a hybrid government between unitary and confederal. It's a little both. And that's what our founding fathers created, was hybrid government that had elements of unitary and elements of confederal in it. Okay, so let's summarize real quick. The unitary government was viewed as too strong, too tyrannical, too oppressive, too abusive. So we declare independence from this, and then we intentionally create a government that is too weak, does not have power enough to rule over us, the people. And Articles of Confederation weaknesses, and Shays Rebellion is going to reveal is too weak. So then we're going to want to search for a government that is stronger than this one. So when we create the federal government under the United States Constitution, we in fact create a limited government, one that balances power between the national government and the state government. That's what we mean by limited power. So we create a government in a unitary system where power only comes from the central government to the states, and then the power, locus of sovereignty, comes from 13 different areas in a confederation. Creates a weak league of friendship, and then the federal we have shared power both ways. Okay, and then explain how the weaknesses in the Articles of Confederation and Daniel Shays Rebellion both led to a call for a stronger central government. Our essential question is, what was the Articles of Confederation? The Articles of Confederation were our first form of government for the newly formed United States. The Declaration of Independence did not give us new government in 1776. So by 1781 we created the Confederation Congress. The Articles of Confederation created it, and it's going to give too little power to Congress. It can't do a number of things. Big time is it can't tax and it can't enforce laws. And the states are going to keep their power and their authority. And there's a copy of the first page of the Articles of Confederation. So what was Shays Rebellion? Okay. Shays Rebellion from August 1786 to June 1787 was an uprising of these Massachusetts farmer out in western Massachusetts, out in this area, and they're going to be protesting increased state taxes from the state of Massachusetts, and they're going to be protesting some government policies and some farm foreclosures. So why was the rebellion happening? We need to look at that. As a result of the American Revolution, Massachusetts had printed too much currency. Each state had the power to print its own currency under the Articles of Confederation, and Massachusetts had printed $400 to $500 million of paper currency in order to fund the American Revolution. And they're going to inject that into the economy. What that's going to do is it's going to cause inflation, and the value of paper money, what we call bills of credit in Massachusetts, paper money, is going to depreciate. In other words, its value is going to decrease after the American Revolutionary War. So if we look at this little chart over here, $100 in gold and silver in January 1777 was equivalent to $105 in paper money. So that's pretty good. But if we look, only a few years later, in 1780, April 1780, that $100 worth of gold and silver, what we called hard currency, in paper money or bills of credit, was only worth 42 cents. So half, or less than half the value. That's how much it had depreciated over that short period of time after the American Revolutionary War. So this is going to cause a bad economy in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts is also going to have these policies that are very indifferent to Massachusetts farmers in the western part of Massachusetts. And they're going to demand that farmers pay debts in hard currency, gold and silver, in other words. And that's what did not depreciate in value. The paper currency, the bills of credit, depreciated in value. Farmers wanted to pay with paper money. Massachusetts and a bunch of the bankers and wealthy merchants wanted to be paid in gold and silver. So the state of Massachusetts, you had to pay in hard currency, gold and silver. And a lot of farmers thought that was unfair. And those who didn't pay were put in jail. There was a debtor's prison. So a lot of people went to jail for not paying their bills. So Shays Rebellion happens in protest of those policies. And at the same time, the Massachusetts government is going to raise taxes in order to pay off its debt. So if we look at this cause and effect sheet here, what causes Daniel Shays Rebellion is there's a post-war economic depression, and there's a lack of hard currency, gold and silver, and then the paper money had depreciated, and Western farmers couldn't pay back their loans, and the banks are going to call in the loans and foreclose on farms because they want hard currency, gold and silver, not paper currency. And then the Massachusetts government calls for increasing taxes and requiring payment in hard currency, and then these farmers who are former Revolutionary War soldiers are going to rebel and shut down county courts so they won't be able to collect these taxes, or take their foreclose on their farms. So they're attempting to do this. These farmers, are led by Captain Daniel Shays, and they're not trying to take over Massachusetts, just trying to make some changes. Okay, so what were the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation, and we're going to look at how Shays Rebellion exposed those. First of all, the national government, not Massachusetts, did not have the power to tax. If the national government did have the power to tax, there wouldn't have been as much debt. And during the Revolution, they asked for money, but Massachusetts, states like Massachusetts, just say no. So the national government's going to be in debt. There was no national court, so the farmers couldn't go anywhere to, complain or have a forum to deal with their state and its policies. So there was no Supreme Court or federal court system. In order to change the Articles, you needed all 13 states to agree. That was kind of hard to do. 9 out of 13 to pass laws was difficult. There was no president, no executive branch, no commander-in-chief to go out and put down rebellion. And then the national government could not regulate interstate trade. Alright, those are a few big ones. And then how are the weaknesses revealed in Shays Rebellion? Specifically, no executive branch or president with the commander-in-chief powers to lead an army. Even though Shays' group was not trying to overthrow Massachusetts, just trying to slow it down and stop and change it. This made many leaders question, how would a national insurrection be put down? How about if another nation internationally tried to take over the United States? Would the Articles of Confederation have a president or commander-in-chief strong enough to lead this standing army, which it did not have at the time, against and defend themselves? And some said no, it could not. It was too weak. And then no national judicial branch to settle disputes. Massachusetts farmers had no forum to hear their civil complaints against bankruptcy, or to have complaints against their state heard. And then there was no national currency. Each state created its own currency, set its own values or standards and measures, and farmers suffered from a credit squeeze during this bad economy. It was caused by a lack of hard currency, gold and silver. And post-Revolutionary War, the United States was in economic depression, so the national government could not regulate interstate trade down here or do anything with money, print coin money itself, because the central government, and a lot of leaders thought the central government needed more power to deal with these economic issues, like power controlling currency, like coining, printing currency, or making coinage, and then setting the value of those against gold and silver. And then lastly, the national government under the Articles could not regulate interstate trade, and the national government, a lot of leaders felt, could not improve the economy by regulating interstate trade because they couldn't have that power to do that. They thought they could make the economy work more efficiently, but with these weaknesses they could not. Their hands were tied. So how did these weaknesses in the Articles and then this event, Daniel Shays Rebellion, lead to a call for a stronger central government? The weaknesses in Daniel Shays Rebellion call for a constitutional convention. And so the Constitutional Convention is going to be held May 25th to September 17th, 1787 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and with the purpose of revising the Articles. 55 delegates attend, 12 states attend, Rhode Island does not. They met in secret, and they're going to eventually write the United States Constitution. Here's a copy of it. And some of the changes that are going to be made in the United States Constitution are right here. I'm not going to go over them with you. You can look at this, pause it right here, and read it. Right here are the weaknesses. and here are the changes that was made in the Constitution. Just pause your video right here and look and see what change the Constitution made.